Hi everyone, George here, the editor of the Sales Transformation Podcast. If you're a regular listener, you've probably come across friend of the show, Dr Grant Van Ulbrich before. He's been on the podcast a few times and has appeared at our annual GST events. If you don't know Grant, he's the creator of Scared So What, a change management methodology which focuses on the need to manage personal change when undergoing organizational change. Dr Grant actually came up with the idea for Scared So What while studying for his master's with Consalia, and as you might have gathered, has since gone on to gain a doctorate at Middlesex as well. As I mentioned earlier, Phil's interviewed him on the show before, but this week we're turning the tables and Grant is interviewing Phil for a change. That's because this interview originally aired on Grant's Scared So What podcast. I'll put a link to the Scared So What podcast in the show notes, so you can go and check out all the other great conversations Grant has had about navigating personal change, and I'll also include some links to find out more about Scared So What, as well as Dr. Grant Van Ulbrich himself. Now I filled you in on the background, please enjoy the episode.
Welcome to the Scared So What podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Grant Van Ulbrich. This is the show where we break through the fear of change and ask the question, scared? So what? Each week we dive into personal change management, coaching, and leadership for the future, giving you real-world tools, insights, and stories to help you lead yourself and others through transformation. Whether you're navigating change in your life, your career, or your organization, this is your space to learn, to grow, and to take bold action. So, are you ready? Let's move from fear to forward. Welcome to the Scared So What podcast show. This episode focuses on leadership and coaching within sales. We're joined with a very special guest who is the founder and CEO of the Consalia Sales Business School, pioneering the professionalization of the sales career pathway through apprenticeships, undergraduate, graduate, and even doctoral programs in partnership with Middlesex University. He's also the host of the Sales Transformation podcast show and an author of Selling Transformed, which is available on Amazon. Hailing from the Greater London area, it's time to meet my professor and my mentor, Dr. Philip Squire. Dr. Squire, how are you today?
I'm very well, and it's very nice to listen to your introduction, Grant. I can see that you've done this before.
Just a couple of times.
Just a couple of times, but no.
Well, you didn't think that you're teaching me in the master's program and everything else that I wouldn't learn from you, doing your own podcast show as well, too.
Yeah, no, it's just I'm sure also from your experience in the leisure industry and, the shipping that you will, your voice, you've got the voice of someone that presents very well, Grant. So,
bless.
yeah.
I do remember my old days on the ships, whether it was the theater, doing live talks with 2,000 people, or even cruise TV. Those are fun days. So it's actually kind of fun to actually be here again.
So here you are running your business show.
There we go.
It's
Well, I
very
had
nice
to learn.
be invited. Thank you.
I had to learn from the master as well, too. But for all of our listeners on today's show, tell us a little bit about who you are and what your exciting career and what made you decide to start a sales business school. That's so interesting.
Well, I've been in sales all my life, and I think, like many, have fallen into sales accidentally, and then joined a sales consulting company, and started my own business when I was in my late 20s. So I guess I've been in the sales field, for many, many years. But the company went through a number of iterations and changes over the years. We formed Consalia in 2006 as a joint venture between a Spanish and Italian business. And it was about that time I was also doing my doctorate. And it was through the doctorate, really, that we began to make a subtle but quite profound shift, into the sales education area. And it was in 2008-ish, 9, that we piloted our first master's programs with one of our clients, Hewlett Packard. And based on the success of that and interest from other organizations with whom we worked, we then decided to create fully fledged, if you like, executive master's programs for people like yourself, Grant, who sort of joined. And yeah, then through the years with the apprenticeship programs in the UK, we had the opportunity to then add to the curriculum of programs for the undergraduate. But it was with the undergraduate BSc courses that we run. Yeah, so it was a bit by chance, that
Was it?
we emerged into this area, but it was not an instant shift. But I'm sure we'll talk about transformation later on. But it was a gradual shift. But it's just so pleased we made the shift. Looking at what's now being created.
Oh, well, of course. And you look back at everything you've done, but
Yeah.
your doctorate, can I unpack that just a little bit? You did some incredible global research on, you have to help me with this if I remember correctly, because I was so focused on my studies, but I remember yours was on, sales effectiveness almost. People, do people actually feel that salespeople are worthy of doing their jobs, et cetera? And there was a percentage that you found of salespeople that
Oh,
are
it's
truly
key.
effective at their
Yeah.
jobs. Is that correct?
It is, yeah. I mean, it started off, the doctorate started off a bit on the back of a research project with one of our clients, which was exploring how do our clients want to be sold to.
Yes, that's
And
right.
the purpose of that initial research was to get examples of good and poor practice. And one of the questions that I sort of threw out, which happened I say later, it happened after the first interview, actually, but it wasn't part of the interview at the beginning, was the question that, having described good and poor practice, what percentage of salespeople sell in a way you want? And the first person said, who felt 95% were a complete waste of time.
Oh my God.
And I thought, okay, maybe he's just one of those
You've
awkward
been
guys.
flipped, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and then I decided to ask the question of the next person, and he said less than 10%. And it was only 3 interviews to begin with, but it was enough to trigger, a question, which was that we need to explore this further. And that's
Yeah.
when it then morphed into a fully fledged doctorate program. And we are actually 15 years later revisiting that same global research project. So we are interviewing
Yeah.
people in Asia, in Europe, in Americas, using similar questioning approach with some contextual change to do with technology and so on.
Hmm.
And but asking that same question, what percent of salespeople sell in a way that you want? So we want to see if the needle has changed in the last 15 years from a
Well, and
customer perspective. So we're very excited
yeah,
about the research we're doing.
and it's so interesting that you say that, because I remember being skeptical when I first learned that in the master's program.
Yeah,
I remember thinking, well, within our own sales force, our global sales force, could that be true within hospitality?
yeah,
And I remember asking you, and you actually tactfully, audaciously challenged us back and said, well, why don't you ask your customers and find out? And I remember we actually did a survey to engage, and we
yeah,
found out that less than 10% of our salespeople are actually effective at their jobs. They were
yeah,
dumbfounded,
yeah,
absolutely dumbfounded, which led to the partnership of you
yeah,
actually then teaching us, well, what do we need to do, and what does
yeah,
great sales look like,
yeah,
and how do we help people to transform to where people want to be
yeah.
sold to? Well, that also drives me into what inspires you as well too, as to what you have done, and you've championed so many people's lives around the world within the sales career pathway. But can you describe just a little bit what your leadership style is and what you believe to be important, so important that you teach it to your students, but also that you live within your own teams?
Yeah, so, it's an interesting question, and I remember I was talking to a coach. I had a personal coach at one stage. I think during the pandemic times, there was someone who was getting an accreditation, and she asked if she could coach me. So, and when I was involved in the coaching sessions, and she was exploring, you as a leader, one of the areas that I was interested in was this question is, does the situation choose the leader? or does the leader choose the situation?
Interesting.
So what I mean by that is
Yeah.
is that take someone like Winston Churchill.
Mhm.
Um, he was a great leader, during wartime, but he was a very poor leader during peacetime. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
So the situation that he found himself in, I mean, he couldn't have chosen a better prime minister during the war, but he simply was not regarded in the same way when he was re-elected during peacetime. And I've been reflecting as well a bit on when you talk to me about leadership, and my leadership approach is it to what extent is Consalia sort of, what leader does Consalia need? And
Mhm.
am I that person?
Oh,
Or
wow.
to what extent do I need to change? Yeah.
Well,
Um,
interesting. You've
so,
built the whole program and the whole company and the organization, and it's so interesting to hear
yeah,
you
but we
reflect on
talk
it.
about ambiguity, and
Yeah.
when we talk about leadership styles, if you remember that module 4, when
Yeah.
we talk about the work of David Wilkinson at
Mhm.
Cranfield, that had a big impact. It's the sort of ambiguity advantage, and it's whether that's much more sort of consensus driven, I guess, but working with subject matter experts who may be cleverer than you and smarter than you,
Mhm.
but are able to fix problems in different areas which go sort of go beyond your own capacity. So
Yeah.
I suppose you could say that, in terms of a leadership style, which also reflects in our degree programs to some extent,
Mhm.
is it sort of creating a space for other people to thrive,
Yeah.
no matter what situation is.
Mhm.
But just coming back to what I was alluding to earlier, because the pandemic was a crisis, and I began to question during a crisis, and to some extent, the world is going through huge amounts of change at the moment.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, to what extent does what are the qualities needed at a point in crisis? Because sometimes you have to be more directed.
Mhm.
You need to set out a clear vision for what
Right.
it is you want to do. And I was really concerned whether I was that person.
I love
Was I
that.
that person at that moment in time right for my company?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I like that though, but that shows sincere reflection and internal examination of your own sense of identity. And am I right for this moment, or am I right for this position in time,
Yeah.
or do I have my own strengths and moments of what I can contribute? And actually, I would think that that's perfect for reflection,
Yeah.
critical reflection
Yeah.
of oneself to be able to see how can I be agile, how can I adapt, and how can I
Yeah.
grow.
Yeah.
And I can also say from my perspective,
Yeah.
I've known you for years. I consider you a truly transformational leader. Which is odd because a lot of us more fall into a transactional, but
Yeah.
I see you as that you've mastered that blended approach of when can I add value and when is it no longer about me, but it's more about the person. And you said it just a while ago, you know, you see yourself as helping to facilitate that with others. And that's truly transformational when you do that and you realize it's just not about you. It's about them and their journey.
It is. But I know that I'm, probably quite frustrating also to kind of work with because, I've been an entrepreneur for most of my life, and entrepreneurs, as you know, think in a non-sequential ways,
Yeah.
and you're always racing with ideas and thoughts and things like this. And I just
No, I know.
uh,
I'm
so
laughing.
so
Yes.
I by no means, uh, as I think it's something that you learn about and from all the time. But yeah, when you say, "Am I transformative?" Oh, it's very kind of you to use those words, but um, I don't know. I think that when you look back on what's been achieved at Consalia, it's been pretty transformative, not
Yeah.
just for our business, but actually for the industry, that
Yeah.
we're in. No one, and that's something to, sort of be pretty proud about.
Well,
Um,
and it's nice that you say that as well too, because something that I teach within Scared So What, which you know so well,
yeah,
personal change is about perception. So it's interesting. I can have my perception of how I see you
yeah,
as a leader,
yeah,
but yet you have your own perception of how you see yourself, and
yeah,
we forget that sometimes.
yeah, yeah. Because we talk about four key mindsets for leadership. We talk about vision, we talk about desire to be the best, we talk about empowerment and potential. And and since those early days of defining those four mindsets, it's probably morphed a bit more to the ambiguity angle as
Mhm.
well, being able to deal with ambiguity. Um, but actually, I think it's quite useful to come back to those, at certain stages in your sort of leadership career to say how clear is the vision?
Mhm.
What is desire to be the best actually? What does that mean? In terms of KPI setting, and then you've got the ability to recognize potential in others and empowerment. So those principles, I would say, are sort of guiding principles that have helped define a little how I think about leadership. And you sort of come back to it and say, is this right? Is it
Mhm.
fit for purpose? But
But I do like that. That's always questioning. But and you know what? And you can see it. And we've all seen it in leaders that sit there and they actually live in their steadfast and say, yes, this is exactly who I am. Do we not reflect? Do we not change? Do we not actually, and I love that you're actually admitting that that is something that you do. Um,
well, yeah, yes, and it is very interesting that the fixed and growth mindset, which you're very
mhm.
familiar with, and
Yeah.
and you, it's it's very interesting to use that as a framework when you start to look at the challenges that you face ahead, and you're thinking, well, can we or can we not do that? And you begin to question, was am I looking at it as sort of fixed mindset or a growth
Mhm.
mindset perspective? And
Yeah.
what's holding me back, in
Mhm.
in sort of pursuing something? Yeah,
Mhm.
it's very interesting,
I
actually,
love it. I love it.
looking at
Well,
you know, what are the plates we need to spin in order to move on to the next level of achievement or
yeah.
development? Yeah.
Well, along that synergy, what's holding me back? That's where Scared So What was born, and you were
Yeah.
there. The day it happened,
I
and
was
actually,
there. I'll never forget
you
that
were
moment, Grant.
really instrumental in guilty into my current career path. But so Scared So What, for those of the on the podcast, you remember it's the first personal change model in technology, and it was born in your sales master's program. What does that mean to you and for you?
Well, I think you know that we're incredibly proud of everything, and I'm proud of everything that you've achieved, in that. And it's rare to get, a student who's taken it on to the levels that you've done. Um, and I mean, apart from what you've achieved through your master's program itself, it fits very much through the ethos and philosophy of the master's programs, which is a master of science. You're building upon a level of knowledge. So we shared knowledge with you. You
Mhm.
looked decidedly pissed off when we shared various models. It doesn't work for me. I
Uh-huh.
challenged you back, saying, "Come on, Grant, create your
I
own
thought I was going to fail that
your
class.
your theory," and then you did. But you did it though. But by it, this is how I see what you've done, is by taking on board certain learnings that you had from the program, whether it's Gibbs reflective cycle or whether it was the growth and fixed mindsets and,
Mhm.
and so on, and you gave it your own personal nuance
Yeah.
and created something new from it. So for me, that's what we want to achieve. But you've taken it on to sort of developed it into a doctorate, into your book, and uh,
Yeah.
it's amazing the ripple effect of what has happened from those.
Well, when we talk about, and I thank you for that. And when we talk about your leadership, as we did just a while ago, that was a perfect example. here we are in a master's in science level course, executive course, with other executives in the room, in the cohort, et cetera. And you're actually portraying information, you're delivering information, transferring the knowledge over to us. And we were looking at, a century's worth of organizational change and the top
Yeah.
global change models and methodology. And that's what we were learning. And in that moment of my resistance, you could have very easily been a transactional leader and said, Grant, this is the curriculum. This is what you need to do, and follow the instructions. And maybe your master's program and project should be about this. But you didn't. You
Mm.
had a choice there in that moment. And I was challenging you in your deliverables of the knowledge, but you actually chose to actually say, what else could you do? What's next?
Yeah.
You went right into pulling it right out. What's the resistance? And you chose through flexation to actually say, this young man has an idea. Let's pull it out of
Yeah.
him and find out where it could go. And that's a conscious choice of the leadership,
Mm.
which is why I do describe you as transformational. Well, I
I
thank you for
suppose,
that.
yeah, it was very nice of you to say that, but I mean, it's giving people space, isn't it, to thrive? But not everyone takes the opportunity. Some people do
True.
and some people don't. And you chose, going back to your scared so what, you chose to take control.
But honestly, and we talk about, and I'll just gentle remembrance. I remember being terrified in that class, of my cohort members who were senior than me, leading in sales and other organizations. And it was a very vulnerable moment to actually say, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here, and I don't believe this. But I'm really proud of the direction of the way it went, which is
Yeah,
great.
but it was, I mean, you had a really supportive cohort.
Yeah, yeah,
They're very interesting people on that cohort. You had some very senior leaders, like you said, who were there with their direct reports.
yeah.
And that was in itself an interesting
Mhm.
situation,
Oh, yeah.
but the space that you created, I think, and supported each other, I know you must have been terrified. And I was, yeah, I remember some of the comments you made right at the very beginning of the program, and you got us all laughing.
I'm
Um,
glad you were laughing. I wasn't. That was so
but
fearful.
actually, I think the diversity also of the thinking that we saw, um, yeah, made it a very special group, actually. Yeah,
Well, I keep coming back to transformation, and I know
yeah,
I look at all of your work. Transforming and transformation is at the heart of your
yeah,
doctorate, your books, your podcast, everything you do, the Sales Business School. What
yeah.
would you say the importance of personal change, coaching, and leadership is within transformation? And really,
Uh, yeah.
what's the difference between change and transformation?
Well, I think we allude to what problem are you trying to solve? Is it to create a faster caterpillar, or is it
Mm.
to transform into a butterfly? And so there's a massive difference, between the two. And a lot of people talk about transformation projects, but it's really just big change projects that they're doing.
True,
And a lot of
true.
transformation projects fail in its execution. I'm sure you've got all the data
I
on
know. I
it.
do. There's a
You
lot
know,
of money
um,
behind that failure.
yeah. So I think, in a world which is changing so fast and so dramatically, um, it's people are using it perhaps as an overused term that,
Yeah.
that change is the norm, but actually it really requires a deep-rooted understanding of what it takes to transform because, whether you're looking at it from a technology perspective with AI or a geopolitical situation, with the challenges that the world is facing right now,
Mhm.
the Trump effect of tariffs and, there's so much
Yeah.
dramatic stuff going on in the world that for many companies, it is about transformation, not change. They need
Mhm.
to think completely differently. So you asked me the question about personal change and that, the challenge that so many companies have is winning the hearts and minds of those that are actually having to go through change.
Yeah.
And whilst, there are, and this is the point about your research that you've done, whilst there are many sort of models um, to help organizational change models, whether it's Kotter or whatever, um, yeah, not so much as you found out through your research is done on sort of personal change,
The individual.
an individual change, and
Yeah.
and um, and we know that without, we always say that you will never achieve transformation, organizational transformation, unless you get transformation happening at an individual level.
Exactly.
It has to go back to the individual. So I'd say there's a huge connection, between the two.
Hmm.
Um, Interesting McKinsey report was about how many people do you need to have to support a transformational change in a company. I can't quote the exact date in the paper, but the figure of 7% came up, which is quite. Now, how many people do you need to have with this drive and the motivation to achieve transformational change? It's quite a low figure, but you need a nucleus of people
Yeah.
you can work with, and then you get the ripple effect
There
of
has to be that enabling moment.
enabling moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that what you've done with your model is sort of created a very, it's a simple, but often the best ideas are simple,
Mhm.
a simple framework for people to look at a problem, and take control really of how they're going to respond to it, and
Mhm.
with some sort of concrete actions that come from it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
Well, I love how you teach this methodology as well too, because I was doing a keynote the other week with about 60 C-suite members. It was a chief
yeah,
revenue officers, amazing group, amazing group. And I opened it up and I said, "How many of you actually know how to facilitate transformation?"
yeah,
About three hands went up,
yeah,
and I said, "How many of you have been taught how to manage personal change for yourself?"
yeah,
Zero hands
yeah,
went up. But yet,
yeah,
they've all established that they were leaders. This is
yeah,
the C-suite, can't say that word, the C-suite, but yet the two most critical elements, transformation and
yeah.
change for the individuals, they haven't been taught how to do. And that
Yeah, it's
shocks me.
interesting. It's something that you sort of, I guess, deal with, through the busyness
Mhm.
of life. Yeah.
Yeah, just
And
just get
you
on with
said
it.
a
Just
bit
deal with
from
it.
experience, and
Yeah,
some things happen to you which can completely, destroy confidence, and there are other things that help build it.
yeah,
So
exactly.
you're right, but it's very ad hoc. It's not structured. It's just
Yeah,
situational luck, and things like that, that may have affected change in a positive way.
mhm,
But no, I think that what you've done is now started to introduce, much more structure to it, much more science behind it,
mhm.
and
Well,
that's why.
hopefully we're giving people the way forward. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, let me focus on you just for a second. So when it comes to guiding you and your organization and even your students through change, that personal side of it, how do you manage that as the leader of Consalia
You mean for the students?
for students and even for your team?
Well, I mean, with students, I would say coaching is a huge, sort of, um, element of this. And so, for students, for example, we get very young students coming out of school into a
Right.
undergraduate program, into the big wide world of commerce and business, working for, you know, big multinational companies. And of course, there's a huge amount of learning that they've got to do. But there's a massive support structure, to help support the student through that journey. Part of it is compliance driven, so you've got, students attending programs, tripartite meetings with employees, student managers, and so on. So there's a huge kind of support program so that you can help them sort of navigate the requirements for the academic program, but also within the context of the businesses that they're in. So there is a lot of coaching support that's actually provided, um, the individuals when they go through the program.
Yeah.
And I hope you're going to be also talking to Louise about personal change and the program. I know you're in conversation with her, so
Coming in to see her next week.
oh, great,
Yeah. Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah, so I would say that in terms of, it's quite difficult when things are moving. As I was talking to various team members yesterday, things happen so quickly, so fast,
Yeah.
even in a small business.
Yeah.
You sometimes forget the pressure that people are under, and and that can suddenly explode. It's that
Yeah.
someone can suddenly have a meltdown, and
Of course.
it's so important to capture people's context
Mhm.
and sort of and not take things for granted.
Exactly. And
So
that's where coaching is so powerful as
I
well
think
too,
coaching is
because
powerful. Yeah,
we want to go out and nurture people, especially when we see people in those moments of crisis, or even I remember being, a student in your
yeah,
program as well too. You learn something so new, and all of a sudden, here's the next assignment, and that becomes so daunting. It's like, how am I
yeah,
going to do this? There comes the fear, the stress, the anxiety, the worry, the assumption,
yeah,
and it's that gentle coaching moment. How are you doing? What do you think you could do?
yeah,
What does that mean for you? That gentle voice to ask you those open-ended
yeah,
questions, to actually give you the space, the time to
yeah,
think. Nancy Klein, right? Her book, A
yeah,
Time to Think. It's so
yeah,
empowering,
yeah, yeah,
and that ability to break down that change situation in that moment through
yeah,
reflection can
yeah,
actually help you to find cause.
yeah.
Wow, look at the time. We're already up to the end of it, Dr.
We
Phil.
are.
So enjoying with speaking with you, but I have a question that I ask every single person on the show, just to close us out. What is one thing of advice you'd like to give out to people about change, coaching, leadership, or just life as you see it?
I think it's, you know, just take advantage of every possibility that comes your way.
Oh,
Just,
wow.
just, yeah, you're only on this planet for a finite amount of time.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, just explore, the art of the possible and
Love that.
keep an open mindset.
That is empowering. Take advantage, explore, keep an open mindset.
And
Well, to all of my
yeah,
listeners, we've been talking with Dr. Philip Squire, who's the CEO of Consalia Sales Business School. Dr. Phil, it's been wonderful
thank
to
you,
see you
Grant.
again and
It's
to hear
lovely
with
being on
you.
your show. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. To learn more about Dr. Squire, to connect with him, reach out to him on his LinkedIn profile or directly at their company website at consalia.com. I'll go ahead and drop a link to your profile here in the show and notes as well too. Dr. Phil, any final words?
No, it's just a pleasure to be with you here, Grant, and seeing you in this environment. So, yeah, pretty proud of what you've done.
Thank you. And you know what? That feeling of my pride for myself, to hear that from you never stops. So thank you so much. I really
Okay,
appreciate it.
thanks, Grant.
All right. We'll speak with you soon. And to everybody else out on the show, have a great day. Thanks for tuning in.